What's up, guys? Happy New Year! Wishing us all a very successful new year. If this is your first time stopping by this channel, you are most definitely welcome. And if it's not your first time, welcome back. So on today's episode, I'm going to be showing us how to make this beautiful pencil skirt with side frills. A subscriber requested for this. So guys, without further ado, let's get right into the video. So these are the materials I'm going to be using. You need about 1.5 yards of this African print fabric, 1.5 yards to 2 yards. I didn't finish using the 2 yards, and you also need your lining. So now guys, to know the amount of fabric to place on fold, you are going to divide your hip circumference by 4 and you are going to add 3 inches to that. So now this is the front pattern. I'm gonna add to fold my fabric into 2, as you can see, and starting from 1.5 inches away, 1.5 inches is going to be for the band. So starting from 1.5 inches, I've marked my hip line, which is 8 inches, and the full length of this skirt, which is going to be 16 inches. Then I added 1.5 inches as my seam allowance or my turning allowance, and I'm just going to extend that line like so. So now guys, on the waistline here, I'm going to mark down my waist circumference divided by 4. The waist is 28 inches divided by 4, that is 7. And I'm going to add 1 inch as my dart allowance and an extra inch as the seam allowance, the seam or sewing allowance. And now on my hip line, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, which is 39 divided by 4, that's 9.75, and I'll also go ahead to add 1 inch as my seam allowance. So now on the hem line, I'm just going to mark my hip circumference exactly divided by 4. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to connect the 3 measurements like so. You can see from the hip measurement, I'll just connect this in a straight line to the hem line. So now this is it. We are basically done with the front pattern. This is very simple. It's just like how you cut your normal pencil skirts. You know, it's actually a pencil skirt. So now guys, I'm going to be using the front pattern to cut the back part. The back part, the only difference is you are going to add your zipper allowance at the middle. So I'm gonna have to add 1 inch. You can add 1 inch, 1.5 inches as the zipper allowance. So now you can see that is the zipper allowance. So now the next thing is to add our dart. So from the center front, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Yes, and I'm going to notch both pieces together. You can see I'm gonna have to notch the back and front together, so I'll know where to place my dart when I'm sewing. And I'm gonna have to also slit the back piece into 2, or is this slit or split? Yeah. So now guys, the next thing is to cut out the lining. So now guys, when you are cutting the lining, don't cut the lining to be the full length of the skirt. So now my lining is 1.5 inches shorter than the main fabric, right? I hope you understand this. So don't cut the lining to be the full length of the skirt. So I'm gonna have to do the same thing for the back pieces, and I also went ahead to notch my darts also on the lining, right, so as to make it easy for me to locate where I'm going to place my darts when I'm sewing. Yeah, so you can see, I'm just going to show you guys. You can see my lining is 1.5 inches shorter than the fabric itself. So now guys, it is time to sew. You can see these are all the pieces. So now guys, this is the front piece. I'm going to place my lining on the right side of my skirt. You can see this is the hem line. So now I'll just shift the lining to the hem line like so, and I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew this down by 1/4 inch here. So this at the hem of the skirt. So here it is guys, I'm gonna add to sew that part. You can see this is what it looks like. So now the next thing is to shift back the lining to the waist part. I hope you understand what I'm doing. I'm just going to shift the lining back to the waist like so, and I'm going to sew from the hem of the skirt down to the waist in a straight line. I'll sew this down by like 1/4 inch, you know, just a little bit. So we do this so that the lining won't be showing on the right side of the fabric. So, you know, just raise it. We call it raise it. Just raise your lining on the inside a little bit. That's why it is important for your lining to be shorter than your fabric itself. So yeah, this is what it looks like. The next thing now is to turn this to the right side. So you can see I'm just going to turn this to the right side, and I'm going to iron this so it can lay flat. Yeah, so now guys, also for the back piece, I'm going to repeat the same process. I'll just shift the lining to the hem of the skirt like so, and I'll take this to the sewing machine to sew this down. Yes, so, and I'll also shift this back like this, and I'll sew down the sides just like how I did for the front piece. So yeah guys, these are the back pieces. I've gone ahead to attach my lining to the fabric, and I've gone ahead to turn this. You can see what it looks. So now guys, I'm going to take my dart. So on those parts where I notched, I'm just going to measure 3.5 inches on the back skirts. You can see that is where I'm going to place my dart on my sewing machine. And now for the front piece, the dart length for the front piece is going to be 3 inches, just like what I measured here. So here it is. I've gone ahead to take my dart. I've also gone ahead to iron the 3 pieces. So you can see this is what they look like. So now guys, the next I'm going to take the length of my skirt. You can see this is 14.5 inches, and multiply this 14.5 inches by 4. I got 58 inches. So now guys, I've gone ahead to cut out another piece of fabric. You can see this is about 59 inches in length, and the wideness of this is 6.5 inches. Sorry I didn't show this in the video. So now guys, go ahead to hem both edges of this piece, and also hem one side of this. Also, you can see I've gone ahead to cut out 2 pieces of this for both sides of the skirt. So now guys, I'm just going to hem one side of this and not the other side. So on the other side that you didn't hem, you are going to run a loose stitch on it. A loose stitch is the same thing as a gathers stitch. So on that part that is not hemmed, run a gather stitch on it. So now guys, I'm gonna have to run my gather stitch on this, and I'm just going to hold one end of the thread, and I'm going to gather this material like so. So now guys, I'm going to make sure to gather this to the length of my skirt. So now the length I measured earlier was 14.5 inches. So now I'm just going to gather this. I'm going to gather this and make sure that I have 14.5 inches, you know, to 15 inches in length at the end of the day. So the subscriber that requested for this video said she has watched the tutorial here on YouTube, but it wasn't detailed. She didn't quite get this style. So it's why I'm just remaking this, and I'm making sure to put in all the details that is very necessary. So here it is guys. You can see at the end of the day I have about 14.5 inches. Okay, here at this point, you know, it was still longer. I had about 15 point something inches, so I just gathered it more. So yeah, just make sure you have the length of your skirt. So I'll repeat this same process for the other piece. So now guys, once you get your gathers measurements, make sure to tie the knot of the thread to lock your measurement in place, you know, so that your gathers doesn't come loose or doesn't like shortens itself. So here it is. This is the second material, the second frill. I'm just going to repeat the same process that I've done for the first. I'm going to repeat the same thing for this also. So here are the 2 frills. We can call these frills or ruffles. So now guys, the next I'm going to do is to mark my measurement on my skirt. This is the front part. So now guys, remember earlier I left 1 inch as my sewing allowance on both sides of this skirt. So that is what I'm marking. I marked that on the waist, on the hip, and also on the hem line here, just 1 inch. Just make sure to mark your measurements. You know, you can take your measurement again. So that is what I'm doing right now. So now on this line that I've marked, on this measurement here, that is where I'm going to place my frill. You can see I'm facing them to the right side of the skirt. So now guys, also I forgot to mention, when you are making your gather stitch, make sure to make it on the right side of the material, right? So now guys, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine now, and I'm going to sew down my frill to that measurement line. So now guys, before sewing your frill down to your front part of the skirt, make sure to leave about ½ inch away from the skirt. Start from like ½ inch away from the waist of your skirt. So start sewing your ruffles or your frill from that point down to the hem line. So that is what I'm doing here. This is so that when you are attaching your band to the waistline, and when you get to that frill part or the ruffles part, it won't give you any issues, right? So now guys, this is what I'm doing. I'm just making sure to sew down my frills on that measurement line I took earlier, and I've also gonna to repeat the same thing for the second side, and I've also gonna to iron this. You can see what it looks like. So now guys, these are the back pieces. So for the back pieces, I'm going to join both pieces together. So starting from 1.5 inches away, remember for the band, I'm going to mark 7 inches. This 7 inches, this is where my zip is going to get to. So now guys, from that 7 inch, I'm going to mark my zipper allowance, which is 1 inch, and I'm going to sew down from where my zip is going to stop to the end of this skirt. So this is what it looks like. You can go ahead to leave space for slits at the hem of the skirt, but I'm not going to be leaving any slits here. It's not necessary. So now guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to also take my measurement on the back piece. So I've taken my waist measurement and I'm marking my hip line to also take my hip measurement. You can see I'll divide my hip circumference into 2 and mark that. Then the remainder of the measurement, I will split it at both ends of this skirt. So you can see this is very simple to do. So at this point, just go ahead to take your measurement also. Yeah. So now guys, I'm going to place this. I'm going to first, face the frills to the front part of the skirt, and I'm going to place the back piece on the front piece, and I'm going to make sure that when sewing this, I'm sewing on my measurement line. You can see. So just place them on each other like so, and sew down on your measurement line. So here it is. And when sewing, also make sure to sew also on the line where your frills are. I hope I'm making sense here. Just make sure to sew on that same thread line as you've sewn on your frill. Yeah. So guys, here it is. I'm gonna have to attach the frills to both sides of the skirt. So this is what it looks like, and I'm also gonna have to iron this, right? So this is what the inside looks like. So now guys, the next thing is to attach our band. So now the first thing you want to do is to take measurement of what you have on your waist. So starting from where the zip is going to be, I took the round waist measurement, and here you can see I have about 30 inches. So I'm going to go ahead now to cut out my band. So now the band length, you can see the band length here is like 32 inches. I like to add some bit of excess, and the band wideness is 4 inches. You can see if it's unfold, it's going to be 2 inches. Remember that we left 1.5 inches for the band, so the remaining ½ inch is going to be for the joining allowance. And I've also gone ahead to attach a paper stay to give the band some bit of structure. So now guys, starting from where the zipper is going to end, I'm going to be sewing my band to the right side of my skirt, and you can see when I get to where my frill is, I'm going to sew this easily. That is why it is important for you not to start sewing your frills or your ruffle from your waist exactly, right? So here it is. I'm gonna have to attach my band, and this is the excess. I'm just going to cut this off now. So now guys, the last thing we are going to do is to fix the zip to the zip allowance that I left at the back. So I'll just take this to the sewing machine now to attach my zip. So here it is. I'm sewing the zipper to the I like sewing this to the left side of the zipper allowance first before sewing the right. So you can see this is very simple to attach, and once you are done, just make sure it opens and it closes. So now for the excess here, I'm just going to turn this over and I'll sew this down while also locking it, to hold that part in place. I'll repeat the same thing for the other side, and guys, we are basically done with this tutorial. You can see that this is very simple to do. This is a very simple tutorial, or this is a very simple project or style to make if you follow these steps, right? So guys, please don't forget to like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. So guys, this is the finished look. This is what the skirt looks like. This is really beautiful, honestly. So I'm just going to put this on so you can see what it looks like on my body. So you can also make this particular style in a longer length, a long pencil skirt. It's going to come out really beautiful. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see you all in the next video, and I wish you all a very beautiful year. Bye.